Your credit was the only clean thing in this family, so I used it, my mother said. Within 9 weeks, $27,980 in debt sat in my name. $4,812 vanished from my checking account, and the payroll job I had accepted in Nashville was gone before I ever started. 3 different companies flagged me for fraud, and one of them mailed the notice to the people who had done it. Then on Tuesday, October 17th, at 9:08 a.m., Mrs. Loretta Gaines carried a yellow banker's box into Conference Room B, and everything my parents had built collapsed in under 4 minutes. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. My name is Hannah Porter. I'm 24 years old. Now let me take you back to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, on Sunday, June 11th, 2023. That afternoon, my parents' split-level house smelled like fried chicken, lemon cleaner, and the stale coffee my father always forgot on the warmer until it turned black and mean. I had a folder in my tote bag with my offer letter from Hutton Freight Logistics in Nashville, where I was supposed to start as a junior payroll coordinator on July 10th at $20.50 an hour, full benefits, after 60 days. I remember the blue light from the kitchen window hitting the laminate counter, and I remember thinking that maybe I was finally about to become the kind of adult who had her own mailbox, her own car insurance, and a bank account nobody else could touch. My mother, Denise Porter, kept asking to see the offer letter, not because she was proud, but because she liked details she could use later. My father, Mark Porter, stood by the sink in his stained Porter Exterior Solutions shirt, rubbing the heel of his hand over the back of his neck the way he did when money was short and he did not want to say it. Loretta Gaines was there because she had lived next door to us since before I was born, and because at 71 she had earned the right to walk into almost any room in that neighborhood without being explained. She was a retired probate clerk from Rutherford County, always in pressed slacks, always carrying peppermints in her purse, and she had the kind of voice that made people sit down before they realized they were being corrected. My mother waited until plates were dirty and people were slow from sweet tea before she brought up the family business. She said the pressure washing company needed a small equipment line, just temporary, and since I had that office job now, maybe I could help by letting them run one application through my name. I told her no clearly once. Loretta set her fork down and said, "Denise, a daughter is not an emergency fund." And it was the only sentence in that kitchen that sounded clean. My mother smiled the way she smiled when she had already decided the conversation was finished, whether anyone else knew it or not. She said I was selfish, then corrected herself and called me young, which in her mouth meant stupid but still useful. My father stared at the refrigerator handle like it had a message on it. I said no again, and this time I added that I had to keep my credit clean if I wanted the apartment Noah Merritt and I had been looking at near Nashville to even approve me. That was the first moment that mattered, and I did not know it yet. The first theft was not the money. It was the assumption that I could refuse with my mouth and still belong to them on paper. Noah had been in my life long enough to notice patterns without commenting on all of them. He was 26, worked inventory at an auto parts warehouse off Joe B. Jackson Parkway, and had the kind of steadiness that never announced itself as wisdom. That night, after the dinner, I met him at a Panera on Old Fort Parkway and showed him the offer letter while rain tapped the windows in thin, nervous lines. He smiled, pushed half his cookie toward me, and asked one practical question, which was whether my bank statements and credit reports were already going to my own address or still going to my parents' house. I told him I had not changed everything yet because I was trying to save money until the move. He looked at me for a second and said, "Cheap is expensive when the wrong people can open the mail." I laughed when he said it because I still thought caution was the same thing as paranoia, and that is the kind of mistake people make right before they have to become exact. The first call came on Thursday, July 6th at 8:14 a.m., while I was pulling into the parking lot of Dr. Aaron Caldwell's pediatric dental office where I worked the front desk. The number on my screen said One Main Financial, and when I answered, a woman asked when I planned to make the first payment on my $18,740 personal loan. I thought she had the wrong person until she read my full name, my social security number ending in 4421, and my parents' address on Manson Pike. My hands went cold around the steering wheel, and for a full second, I could hear the tiny click of my turn signal still blinking because I had forgotten to cancel it. By 9:03 a.m., I had pulled my Experian report in the break room and found not just the One Main loan, but a Discover card with a $6,200 balance and a Home Depot Pro card with $3,140 on it. At 9:47 a.m., Hutton Freight Logistics emailed to say my offer was being rescinded because adverse findings had emerged during final screening, and they could revisit me in the future once the discrepancies were resolved. That is how long it took them to erase me from a future I had already started packing for. I drove to my parents' house on my lunch break with my phone hot in my hand and the taste of mint gum turning bitter in my mouth. My mother was at the kitchen island cutting strawberries like she was in a commercial for Normal Life, and my father was in the garage pretending to organize extension cords. When I put the printed credit report on the counter, my mother did not even flinch. She looked at the pages, then at me, and said the exact line you heard at the beginning, like the logic of it should have calmed me down. My father finally came inside when I said the word police, and he used the worst possible sentence a parent can use in a moment like that, which was, "We were going to pay it back before it mattered." It already mattered. Harm does not become harmless because someone planned to stop later. I left that house, went straight to the Wells Fargo branch on Memorial Boulevard, and found out something else had already happened. My checking account had been hit by 4 transfers over 6 days, totaling $4,812, all sent through online bill pay to accounts connected to Porter Exterior Solutions, plus one debit card purchase at Lowe's for $417.26. The account had only been mine for 3 years, but I had once logged in on the family desktop when our Wi-Fi was out at work, and my mother had apparently saved enough of the information to get back in. I had $46 and some change left, and the branch manager slid me a fraud form across the desk with a blue pen chained to a plastic stand. I still remember the weight of that pen because it was the first object I touched after understanding that my own mother had reached through a password and into my pocket. Some betrayals are loud. This one sounded like printer paper and fluorescent lights. That night I moved what I could fit into Noah's Honda Civic, which turned out to be 2 laundry baskets, a duffel bag, my laptop, and a shoebox full of pay stubs and tax forms I had never imagined would become evidence. Noah did not ask for a speech. He changed the porch bulb at his apartment before I got there, so I would not miss the keyhole, set a phone charger on the arm of the couch, and said, "Top drawer in the hall is empty. Use it." The next morning, I froze my credit with Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, filed an FTC identity theft report, and made a police report with Officer Lena Foster at the Murfreesboro Police Department. Then the whispers started. A woman from New Hope Fellowship texted to say she was praying over our family conflict. My cousin Tara asked why I was trying to send your own parents to jail over a misunderstanding. My mother told people I had become unstable after losing my job offer. And suddenly sympathy arrived in the same tone people use for scandal. She was not protecting my parents. She was protecting their standing. I went quiet after that, and it was the smartest thing I did all year. I did not keep quiet because I was beaten. I kept quiet because every time I spoke, my words got twisted into somebody else's story, and every time I wrote something down, it stayed where I put it. I bought a black 3-ring binder from Target, a pack of divider tabs, and a receipt envelope, and I started building a life that could survive cross-examination. Every lender call got logged with the time, the representative's name, and the case number. Every text from my parents got screenshotted, printed on Noah's cheap brother printer, and filed by date. Facts do not need volume. They need dates, amounts, and the correct spelling of the person who thought you would never get organized. My mother escalated because silence makes controlling people panic. On July 21st, one Maine's fraud department called to ask why I had withdrawn my claim by email the night before. I had done no such thing. The message had come from my Gmail account at 10:43 p.m., saying the loan was authorized and that any prior statements were emotional overreactions caused by a family disagreement. Google sign-in activity showed the login came from an iPad still attached to my parents' home Wi-Fi, the same iPad my mother used for recipes and church bulletins. 3 days later, my USPS informed delivery screenshots showed 2 letters from Discover and one from Wells Fargo that were supposed to come to Noah's apartment, but somehow got rerouted back to Manson Pike. I filed a mail theft complaint, got a P.O. box on South Church Street, and stopped using any password I had ever created under my parents' roof. Silence is not surrender when every quiet day produces another document. The accidental find came on August 4th, and that was when the story changed from ugly to prosecutable. My father texted me at 2:06 p.m. that my old W-2 was in the garage cabinet and that I could pick it up while they were out. I went because I needed it for a rental application, and because part of me still believed stupidity sometimes wears the mask of generosity. The garage door was open, cicadas were screaming in the heat, and inside the small office off the garage, a brother printer tray was still extended with fresh pages in it. On top was a scanned copy of my driver's license, then a typed equipment lease application to Sunbelt Rentals, with my full name listed as guarantor. And under that, a yellow legal pad where my last name had been practiced 5 times in my mother's neat square handwriting. I took photos of everything, including the sticky note with my social security number and the phrase "Hutton salary starts 7:10" written in blue ink. The truth was sitting there already open, like it had gotten tired of hiding. That night I called Samantha Crow, a consumer fraud attorney whose name I got from a legal aid referral list, and I laid out the facts in order without crying once. She listened the way good lawyers do, which is without rescuing the silence too quickly. By then, I had the credit reports, the bank transfer logs, the Gmail login alert, the USPS complaint number, the photos from the garage office, and 14 text messages from my mother that kept insisting we could fix this inside the family if I stopped making records. Samantha said the last phrase twice and told me to forward every message immediately. Then she said something that stiffened my spine in a useful way. People only fear paper when paper tells the truth. That was the week I stopped trying to get my parents to admit anything privately. I was building a case, not a reconciliation. By September, my mother had moved from denial into performance. She wanted a room, an audience, and a version of me she could frame as ungrateful, hysterical, and disloyal. She asked Pastor Glenn Mercer to mediate, which in practice meant she wanted me in a church conference room where deacons would stare and ask whether I really meant to destroy my own family over money. Samantha told me to go only if she could attend, only if it was recorded, and only if I spoke when necessary, and no more than that. Around the same time, my father called me from a number I almost did not answer and said if I came home and signed a statement saying the accounts were misunderstandings, they would stop all this public ugliness. I want to ask you something. If you were 24, had $46 left when this started, and the people who stole your name were still asking you to hand them one more signature, would you have gone back? Drop that in the comments because I really want to know. The meeting got set for Tuesday, October 17th, at New Hope Fellowship, Conference Room B, 9:00 a.m. sharp. When I walked in, the room smelled like burnt coffee and carpet powder, and sunlight was cutting white bars across the long laminate table. My mother was already there in a navy blouse she wore when she wanted to look credible. My father sat beside her with both hands clasped like he was waiting for a dental procedure, and my cousin Tara was in the back pretending she had come to support everyone equally. Loretta Gaines arrived at 9:08, carrying a yellow banker's box with a strip of masking tape on the side that said, Porter, H. She set it down without ceremony, took off her glasses, and said, I brought copies because facts go missing in this family. Noah sat against the side wall in a gray work shirt, quiet as a fence post, holding nothing but my spare phone charger and a legal pad. What happened next is the part people always think I am exaggerating until I list the names in order. Samantha Crow opened the meeting. Melissa Cardin, from Wells Fargo's Fraud Investigations Unit, joined by speakerphone first, then in person 5 minutes later, because she had already been in town reviewing the transfer logs connected to Porter Exterior Solutions. Samantha read the one main loan application aloud, including the IP address tied to my parents' home internet, the wage figure copied from my Hutton Freight offer letter, and the electronic signature timestamped 12 minutes after my mother texted me asking if I had settled down yet. Then Melissa read the bank transfers one by one, with dates, amounts, and vendor names, until the room went so quiet I could hear the old wall clock tick between each line item. Loretta opened the banker's box and slid out the photographs from the garage office, my printed Google login alerts, the USPS reroute complaint, and the legal pad with my forged surname practiced in blue ink. I did not present any of it. I just sat there and watched the records speak. My mother lost control exactly the way liars do when they realize the room has moved past charm and into evidence. She stood up so fast, her chair skidded backward and hit the wall. She pointed at me, then at Samantha, then at no one at all, and said, Fine, I used her information because she never would have helped us if I asked clean. It was the ugliest sentence in the room because it contained the whole case inside it. My father whispered her name once, too late to matter. I remember folding my hands on the table so nobody could say I had dramatized anything. And when Pastor Glenn looked at me like he expected a speech, I gave him one sentence only. I am not here for revenge, I said. I am here for the truth, for the record, and for my name. When liars do the prosecutor's job for you, calm becomes a weapon. After that meeting, I did nothing theatrical. I did not post on Facebook, I did not send mass texts, and I did not call relatives to narrate my own innocence like a campaign. Samantha handled the civil side, Wells Fargo and One Main escalated the fraud files, and Detective Lena Foster referred the case to the district attorney's office with more paper than most family fraud complaints ever get. By February, the Discover account, the Home Depot Pro card, and the One Main loan were all removed from my credit file, and Wells Fargo restored the stolen $4,800 plus fees. My mother took a plea on identity theft and fraudulent use of personal information, with probation, restitution, and a no-contact order that only later softened to attorney-mediated communication. My father got pulled into a lesser charge tied to document tampering and the lease application, then cooperated enough to avoid the worst of it. Restitution is not the same thing as repair. Money returned to the account does not put trust back in the body. My father's reckoning came at 11:38 p.m. on a Thursday in March, when my phone lit up with a number I now knew by muscle memory. I answered because Samantha had already told me never to delete a late call from a guilty man. He sounded tired in a way I had never heard from him as a kid. Not angry, not defensive, just used up. He said, I kept telling myself borrowed and stolen were different words, and that lie let me stay in the room. That was the closest he ever came to a confession that was about morality instead of strategy. I did not forgive him on that call. I told him any relationship with me in the future would require full restitution, full truth, and zero requests for secrecy. Some doors are not slammed shut. They are left on the chain so the person outside can see exactly why they are not coming in. The community consequence happened without my involvement, and that mattered to me more than any public apology could have. I did not ask the women at New Hope Fellowship to stop inviting my mother to organize potlucks. I did not tell the neighborhood that Porter Exterior Solutions had quietly lost contracts after people in town heard why the bank had frozen one of their business accounts. I did not ask my cousin Tara why she stopped liking my mother's posts, or why Pastor Glenn suddenly started preaching about confession with his eyes fixed on the back wall. Word moved the way truth moves in a small city. Slowly at first, then all at once, and never because the injured person forced it. She had weaponized the community when she thought I was weak. In the end, the same community stepped back from her on its own. These days, chosen family looks smaller than the one I was born into, but it feels cleaner in my nervous system. On Sunday nights, Noah makes roast potatoes in a cast iron skillet that is older than both of us. Loretta brings a pie she always insists was nothing special, even when the crust flakes like it came out of a bakery window. And sometimes we eat at the tiny table in our apartment while the dishwasher hums and somebody's dog barks out in the parking lot. Ordinary peace is not glamorous, but it is holy when you had to document your way back to it. I have not arrived at full forgiveness yet, and I am not going to fake a miracle for an audience. I am watching what can be repaired, what cannot, and who only speaks truth once consequences make lying expensive. So I want to ask you this before I go. If the people who gave you your first home were the same people who tried to erase your name, would you leave the door cracked open or close it all the way? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next